Let's get into some of the other news from right around Australia and overseas all this week with our Friday night panel. We love talking to GT Communications' Emma Tognini and Sky News contributor Joe Hildebrand. Welcome to you both.
Love you, mate.
I don't know how to work Facebook, so you imagine what I'm going to be like when we get into this area of having to work out social media. But I heard today a 14-year-old kid in Adelaide has tricked the global messaging platform Snapchat, whatever that might be, their facial age verification system into approving him as a 25-year-old. I mean, now obviously, Gemma, this raises some pretty serious doubts about the effectiveness of the under-16 social media ban that's about to start. That's got to set alarm bells off for some people, doesn't it?
I mean, I don't know why anyone is surprised by this. Everyone in my immediate genuinely, all of my friends with teenage children who are affected by this ban have been saying, their kids have been saying since it was announced, don't worry about it, Mum, we'll find a way around it, because kids are smart and they're more tech savvy than the people who brought this legislation in. So clearly they're sort of sitting back doing the equivalent of smoking a cigar and having a scotch on the rocks and just kind of laughing to themselves, because they are smart and they live in a tech world and they are well able to navigate these things. And I just don't believe, as well intentioned as this legislation is, and despite how much everybody's lauding it, it is so poorly thought out and it's poorly executed, and it doesn't actually factor in real world circumstances like kids being smart enough to get around it.
Joe, I saw on Senate estimates this week, Senator Matt Canavan, who was grilling one of the heads of the department that's supposed to, monitor this stuff and set it up and make sure it works. And he asked the question of if he allows one of his children to use his website, which is supposed to only be available to over 16s, would the social media giant potentially shut down his account? The answer was yes. I mean, seriously?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's ridiculous. And I don't think you are going to see any sort of draconian responses like that, as much as they might exist on the statute books. As soon as anyone tried to enact a penalty like that, there would be an instant uproar and revolt. And that's in no way, I don't think, the intent of the legislation or the campaign that News Corp did, which prompted the government to introduce this world-leading ban. Oprah Winfrey's just endorsed it, incidentally. There's a little bit of breaking news for you. Right. But I think there's perhaps a sort of misunderstanding as to what the nature of the ban actually is. It's not going to, even if it could, completely stop all kids under the age of 16 from ever accessing social media. That would be impossible. What it does do is send a signal to kids and put an important tool in the toolkit of parents to be able to say, you're not allowed to do this. This is against the law. And that just provides a kind of circuit breaker that I think every parent I know, myself included, and my kids are on YouTube all the time as well, they're still going to be watching it. They're allowed to. They're just not allowed to have accounts. So it's kind of like, think of it as shark nets at beaches where there's not a big net around the beach that stops all sharks getting in. There's nets out there that provide barriers, that disrupt the sharks, that disincentivize it, make it harder and harder, and not worth their while for them to come in and take a little chomp on.
Gemma, talk some sense into this bloke, will you?
Look, I'm always really nervous talking about things about parenting because I didn't get to be a mum, but I'm a really good auntie and I've got godchildren, and very many of my friends are parents, obviously. And the one thing that I gently say here, and I genuinely mean it, because I'm not suggesting it's easy, but nothing worth having comes easily. Parents can say no. My parents certainly did, and I didn't grow up in the social media age, obviously, because I'm an old person these days, but I have friends, and they know who they are if they're watching, who parented their children to the extent that their children weren't allowed to have smartphones. How? Because they are the bank of mum and dad, and 13-year-olds don't earn money and can't go and buy a smartphone and all of that sort of stuff. They parented, and was it easy? Absolutely not. Did it cause chaos at some points? I think so. But that's what I'm told parenting is, making hard decisions. And I don't mean to say that to be disparaging. It's just that I don't think we should be... It's a fine line. It's a fine line is what I'm trying to say here. I genuinely mean
it's a little bit more complicated and complex than that. It's like, for example, if you want to talk about social media, it's fine to say no, but if every other kid is allowed to do it, and their
Joe,
parents
if
are saying
every
that,
other
then
kid
yes.
jumped off the harbour bridge, would you jump with them?
Well,
No, but every
of
other kid is not. But every other kid, for example, in my son's class, did have a smartphone and he didn't. And that means he was being left out on social occasions. He wasn't being invited to go and hang out in the park. And so it is actually much more complicated than that.
Oh, I do acknowledge
if you
that
want your
part
kid to
of
be
the
happy and
equation.
included in a friendship group, you have to be all on the same page with his peers. And that's why you have to have a kind of one rule for everybody.
I always worry when Australia is the first country in the world to be doing something.
And
Because
I would say Oprah Winfrey endorsing
seriously.
something is not exactly,
Next stop, the book club.
Exactly.
Well, I just worry when we're the first ones doing something.